Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We have a pony nose, even though this video is not about ponies, but there's a pony nose. Good boy. So, today we're diving into a question I get asked all the time, and it is about goats. So, little Arwen's down there, and big old Shadowfax is here. It's also kind of about him, but mostly about goats. So, I get the question, can goats live with other animals? And the answer is yes, kind of. Sometimes. It depends. It depends is the proper answer. So if you've been around Andersen Acres for a while, hi. Hi. Yes, I know, Shadowfax is a lover. But if you've been around for a while, you will know that our animals have pretty loose boundaries. We have the horse and the goat and the chickens and the ducks and the turkeys and the cats, the dogs, you name it. They share the entire property. Also, you're biting the back of my chair, so, got that going for us. I know. You're a good horse. So, they share the whole property. But just because it works for us doesn't mean you should toss... doesn't mean you should toss a goat into any random pen and hope for the best. Okay? So let's go over what animals goats can usually be housed with, which combinations need extra caution, and when it's just a bad idea. So let's talk about goats with other goats. First, let's get the obvious. This is the obvious one, okay? Goats with other goats. Goats love other goats. They're herd animals, and they don't do well alone. Even if you have other animals, a single goat might still feel isolated. Now, Arwen doesn't. She loves Shadowfax, but she has thought Shadowfax was her dad since she was 3 weeks old. They have an excellent relationship, and everybody has left. So let's turn this so we can maybe see Arwen a little bit better. There she is. So basically, generally, you should have more than one goat anyway. Rule number 1, at least 2 goats in a pair. They can keep each other company. Your chickens are not a substitute for a goat friend. Shadowfax is only because of the way they were raised together. In general, I do recommend at least 2 goats. House them together. They will do fine together, especially if they know each other. Now, yes, you can have goat incompatibilities. 2 that just hate each other and will always hate each other. It happens. Hi, Shadowfax. I know you're a good bunny. But yes, generally goats do fine with other goats. So as long as they're similar size, I would caution against a really large goat with something like a pygmy or a Nigerian. They might just not get along. And the big one will bully the little one if they don't like each other. So maybe a little caution there, but in general, goats with goats, that's a yes. How about goats with chickens, ducks, turkeys, or other poultry, other waterfowl, other birds? Well, this is a combo you see a lot on hobby farms, goats and poultry. In many cases, it works out just fine. I would say in the vast majority of cases, it is fine. Poultry tends to mind its own business, and goats don't usually see the birds as competition, right? So, she's taking a little pee on camera. Good girl, whatever. But generally, it's fine. Generally, goats and chickens work out fine. But there are some caveats, okay? And those caveats tend to be... Let's just move the camera back because Shadowfax is more interesting than she is. But those caveats tend to be that you have to keep poultry feed inaccessible to your goats. Hi, sweetie. Hi. That was good timing. Good girl. Okay, goat bellies and chicken feed do not go together. Okay, do not let your goats eat chicken feed. It will cause bloat and could kill them. Okay, they can't have it. So if you do have goats and poultry together, make sure your goats cannot get into the chicken feed. You also want to watch for bird poop contamination. Birds love to roost above goat hay racks, and it's a great way to spread parasites and bacteria. So make sure your hay doesn't have roosting bars above it or anywhere that chickens can roost. So our hay is on the wall here and there's nowhere for a chicken to sit on top of it. Okay, so just make sure your hay doesn't have a spot for chickens to sit and poop. Okay, don't want that. And remember, ducks love water, goats do not. So try to give the birds water away from the goats where the goats don't have to be. So we give water for the ducks out here and not in there, just so that they can't make a complete mess of the pen all of the time. Okay. What about goats and cats or dogs? Barn cats, are they good? Totally fine. I've never had a problem. Cats are independent and usually too quick and aloof for goats to even care about. We've never had an issue there. I don't expect we're going to have an issue there. Dogs might be a different story. Guardian breeds like our Great Pyrenees are typically great with goats because that's what they're born and bred for. It's in their blood. But the average house dog might not be safe around goats. You're going to have to kind of observe and see if the dogs you have are safe with the goats. The greatest cause of death that is not illness for goats is neighborhood dogs. Okay, and it's tragic and terrible, but those neighborhood dogs could be your own. Your average house dog may think goats are prey, especially smaller goats, especially baby goats. Okay, goats can bully or headbutt dogs, so a smaller dog might get hurt. And Shadowfax is still here because he's such a good boy. And you're going to want to proceed with caution with dogs and goats just to make sure that no one's getting hurt. So a large goat with a small dog, the dog could get hurt. But in general, what you're worried about is the dogs seeing the goats as prey. So I'm not saying no dogs around. Obviously, we have our Great Pyrenees out with the animals all the time. That's their job. But observe. Find out if your dog is safe around your goats, because not all dogs are. Okay, this is one of those you really need to pay attention and find out if it's going to work for you. What about goats and horses or mini horses? Now, obviously, we have a mini horse and we have no problem. But this one comes down to size and personality. So we keep our miniature horse, Shadowfax, who's now left. Everybody's left. Oh, here he comes. But with our goats all the time. I mean, they sleep together. They play together. That's what they do. Everyone gets along well. A full-size horse, I'm not saying that they will deliberately hurt your goats, but accidents happen, and a full-size horse is big, and goats like Arwen or pygmies are small. So a full-size horse could accidentally injure your goats without intending to, and that's not ideal. A single kick can be deadly, okay? I've seen horses deliver a kick to a dog, and the dog doesn't make it. So they could easily injure your goats, and they wouldn't mean to. They could just be defending themselves or saying, get away from me, but the size difference is significant. So you need a very mellow horse, a large space, and a way to separate them if needed, and somewhere... Hi, chickens. Chickens are making weird noises. And somewhere for the goat to go that the horse can't get to. So in our case, if Arwen wants to get away from Shadowfax, these boards are high enough that Arwen can just go under. We did that on purpose. But she never has to get away from him. But we plan for just in case around here. So if she did have to get away from him, she could. We make sure we plan for that. Horses can be aggressive around food as well. So if you're feeding grain or hay, you might want to make sure the goats aren't getting pushed around. Now, he's not aggressive around food. He's pudgy and is fine around food. He just figures there's always more food, and he's not wrong. But some horses can get aggressive around food. So if you have one that's kind of possessive of their food, you might want to watch at feeding times. What about goats and sheep? This is probably the most common one I get asked. Okay, I have mosquitoes biting my legs. That's not fun. But goats and sheep, this is one of the most common pairings I get asked about. It's a hit or miss and kind of depends on your situation. Now, goats and sheep have similar housing and feed needs, but goats are browsers and sheep are grazers. This can cause competition or stress if resources are limited. So if you have them in the same space, make sure they have lots of space. And goats can be a little more aggressive and may headbutt your sheep. So keep an eye on that and get ready to separate. Thank you, Sauron. That is awesome. You're a good boy. So get ready to separate if the goats are a little too aggressive with your sheep. You don't want your sheep getting hurt. Also, there are some minerals, specifically copper, that goats need that can be toxic to sheep. So shared feed is a big no-no. You don't give a feed that says goat to a sheep because it probably has copper in it. You can get a combined sheep-goat ration that does not have copper, or it might have so little copper that it's irrelevant. You probably will have to copper bolus your goats because you don't want to provide a mineral tub that has copper because the sheep will die. So you do have to just be aware of the competing needs when it comes specifically to copper, but to a couple other things as well. So just be aware that there are some competing needs there and you'll have to accommodate. So copper bolus the sheep, or in our case, we just free range. And because we free range, Arwen doesn't need a copper bolus because she is able to eat the plants that will give her what she needs. So we free range. That's not an option for most people, I fully acknowledge. So you'll have to find a way to accommodate the copper needs of the goat without compromising the safety of the sheep. Hi, Blue. Blue's laying right here because he's a good turkey. It can work with sheep and goats, but only if you are vigilant, careful, and have a plan. Okay, so make a plan before you put them together. So what about like goats and pigs or goats and cows or other types of livestock? Here's where I tend to go, maybe not. It can work sometimes, but maybe not. So pigs and goats are typically a bad idea. Pigs can be really aggressive eaters and they don't speak goat. That could lead to fights or injuries. You might be okay if you have a pet goat, a pet pig that is really chill, then you're probably fine. But in general, I would not house goats and pigs together, especially if they are pigs raised for meat. Thank you, Jabba. The pigs tend to be just too aggressive and your goats will probably get hurt. So generally, pigs plus goats, no. Unless it's like a single pet pig that is really chill, then you're probably okay. But again, you have to keep an eye. What about cows and goats? Well, they can coexist, especially if you're doing pasture rotation. But I wouldn't house them in a small space together. It's a size issue. Cows don't always appreciate goats climbing on them, and goats will try to climb on the cows. And cows are so much bigger, they could just accidentally lay on a goat. So if you want to avoid tragedy, don't house them in small spaces. Turn out in the pasture together might be fine. When it comes to exotic livestock, unless you're really experienced with that exotic livestock, I would probably not bother. I would probably not try. Okay. I would avoid housing goats with llamas, alpacas, emus, or other niche animals. Their body language is too different. Thank you, Jabba. And here's where I'm going to bring up donkeys. Often you see people who want to put donkeys in with their goats because they want donkeys as a guardian animal. Donkeys and goats are almost universally a no-no. Donkeys do not like goats. They do not like goats. You're going to see some examples. Someone's going to come and say, I keep my donkeys with my goats. I'm happy for you. I love that it works for you. It does not work in the vast majority of cases. So even mini donkeys, they tend to be really aggressive with goats. They tend to grab them. They tend to hurt them. Don't do it. Okay. So we will not do mini donkeys while we have Shadowfax anyway, because Shadowfax is afraid of other equines. So we're not going to do donkeys anyway, but I certainly would not house them with Arwen because that just is a recipe for disaster. And no. So generally, I would say no to donkeys and goats. Okay, that's my big warning there. Don't do it. But in general, yes, goats can live with other animals, but you need to plan for it. You need to know the risks, give everyone enough space, and keep a close eye on feed, minerals, and behavior. And Jabba. Here at Andersen Acres, we have made it work because we've built a system that's flexible and because our animals grew up together, right? Everyone has been together for years. They're fine together. It's not a free-for-all. It's a carefully controlled chaos, okay? But that is about it for me here today at Andersen Acres. Drop a comment below if you've had success or drama housing goats with other animals. I would love to hear your stories. We'll see you tomorrow.